Voice of the Customer. Now, to present this topic to you, we have a very dynamic speaker, Ms. Bindu Nambisan, who is currently the Head of Service Excellence at Aster DM Healthcare India and Oman. She believes that healthcare patient experience is the next competitive battleground. If you can convert every single patient to an ambassador of your brand, you need very little else to be in top position, isn't it? So what she does is basically work with passion at creating value at every single patient touch point with a focus on process adherence and speed. She's a certified in healthcare management and leadership from the Harvard Medical School, Boston, Massachusetts, and also a Green Belt Six Sigma and a certified instructional designer. She has worked with various organizations like Wipro, Oberoi Group of Hotels, and a varied domain experience in industries such as hospitality, healthcare, IT, and telecom. Who better to teach us more on voice of the customer and let us know about what are the different methods that we can, what are the different things that we can do to hear the voice of the customer as well as to act on it. Bindu is also a good friend and my colleague. And over to you, Bindu, for taking the next session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anna. The voice of the customer is something that's extremely dear to our heart, and we have seen a lot of evolution take place in Aster DM Healthcare as we, it's a journey, and there's no doubt about it. I want to come clean and also want to tell you that this whole thing of service excellence, it is open to interpretation. So I took over the responsibility for this last October. Until such time, I realized that, we were posting, there's something known as NPS, the Net Promoter Score. And, I think Dr. Anna has been privy to some of the journey. And every single unit in our hospital was sort of posting a number in the range of the late 80s and the early 90s. Now, just to give you an understanding of what Net Promoter Score is, it is an answer to the question. And the question is, would you recommend any institution, product, or service to your friends and family on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that I will not, and 10 being that you will. 9 and 10 are considered active promoters. Anything between 1 and 7 are considered not that great, and 7 and 8 are considered neutral, fence sitters. So what is NPS? It is the entire range of scores between -100 and +100, with 0 being in the middle. So essentially anything that's a positive, like a +1 even or a +2, is that you're positive, and you continue that journey. So it's not really something that it's not a percentage to start with. Now, we were posting in the range of 85, 90, at one point even 98. So the question was, and just to put that in perspective, Emirates posts, I think currently it's posting an NPS of somewhere in the range of 53, Emirates, okay, which is the preferred airline. Ritz-Carlton is posting its NPS again in the range of 60s. It's the best hotel in the world with the best service markers that you've ever seen. So it was a little hard to digest that, one of our hospitals could be posting an NPS score in the range of 80, late 80s and 90s. So I was obviously crying hoarse about the fact that, we need to stop, take stock of what we're doing and who are we fooling at the end of the day. You walk into a hospital lobby, in peak OP hours, you ask a patient how long it took for them to get discharged. You ask them how long it took for them to see a doctor. You ask them whether they are happy about the state of the washrooms. Your answer is right there. And you have to be blind as a bat to actually walk in and say that, we are at an 85. That means 85 people out of every 100 are saying that their experience is there. Quite impossible if you ask me. So, but then I was in the sidelines because I was heading learning and development at that point in time. And then this whole opportunity fell on my lap. one of the first things that I did was, focus on more fidelity towards the truth. If you do not focus on the truth, you will only hear lies, and lies have never helped anyone. So the one thing that we did was, rejig the system to ensure that, we are listening to the truth and we are actually listening to the customer. Now, listening to the customer also entails that you put your ego in your pocket, okay? You bring humility to the table. You understand that you're not perfect, but suffice it to know that you want to be perfect. You are headed in that direction. So these are just some of the overlying, philosophical guidelines that kind of steered us in the direction of voice of the customer. We killed everything that we were doing, like all the pen and paper feedback collection. It's open to interpretation, it's open to doctoring. The moment you bring a human being into the picture, and you, tie it down to his KPI or her KPI, that, the more feedback you collect, the better it is. The higher feedback you collect, the better it is. Obviously, their whole focus will be to ensure that, they're getting those feedback, which necessarily does not mean that we as an organization are driving in the right direction. If you really want the voice of the customer or the NPS score to really add value to you, you have to figure out whether what you're looking at is genuine. Your data has to be genuine. Only then does it allow you to steer your ship in the right direction. So we stopped everything, there was nothing. We withdrew all the feedback forms. We withdrew we said, don't worry about it. You don't have to take any more feedback. And what we focused on was a new journey, which was a sort of the cornerstone of which was technology and digitalization. Now, some people have a misunderstanding that digitalization is to transfer the feedback form from a paper into a tablet, but it's not. That's not digitalization, because there is no backend that supports it. So if you just you convert that into a soft copy and you take that to a customer and say, would you mark this? That's not digitalization. Digitalization means that you have an entire system where you are listening to the customer. You're listening and you can listen. I mean, when the customer speaks, believe me, it's a no holds barred conversation. So one thing you need to do at a senior level is to sort of come to the table and agree that no matter how good, bad, ugly the situation is, you are ready for honesty. You're ready for humility. You're ready to take your hat in your hand and stand in front of the customer and allow that customer to speak. Having come to this point where you have this voice of the customer, what exactly is it? So they talk about their experiences, they talk about their expectations, their preferences, as well as aversions. And believe me, they tell you as it is. Now, the whole thing about difference between expectation and experience is a big gap, because we somehow place our money on marketing. And, they go to town with fancy hoardings, great taglines, fantastic websites saying, come to us, we're the greatest, we're the best, we're the fastest, etc., etc. So this customer who's taken in by all of this, when that person actually lands up in the hospital and you're not able to deliver. So marketing has done its job. It has brought the customer to the doorstep. Now what? What do you do with that patient? Are your people trained? Is your infrastructure in place? Do you have systems that promote speed? Simple things like that can go a long way. So how do you understand whether what you have promised outward is actually being met internally? The only way that you can do is allow the voice of the customer to plug that particular gap. Because it is the voice of the customer that will tell you, look, you told me this, 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 but when I came, what I got was this, this, and this. So in healthcare, you understand that when you sit up and take notice of the voice of the customer, people have had reservations with me calling them the customer, saying, we are in healthcare, I appreciate that. And, we need to call in the patient. I don't really have a reservation. But when somebody puts money on the table, they expect something in return. And I personally don't have any qualms in calling a customer because that's what he is, happens to be a patient. Fine. So when you are actually moving from a physician-centered, atmosphere to a customer-centric atmosphere, you really have no other alternative but to actually sit up and let this voice sort of dictate or at least guide you in the direction that you want to take. So there is social media listening, there are feedback forms, there are email, chat, NPS surveys, so on and so forth, depending on the budgets that are available, depending on the talent or the seriousness with which you want to approach this. My only submission is, if you want to do something like this, make it matter, and make it matter in the sense that let's not pull wool over our own eyes. Let's not fool ourselves. You can go to 10 people and you can hear 10 people say 10 fantastic things. It's like me going to the PTA, for my son. And when teachers say too many good things, I start getting, uncomfortable and say, okay, so where's the area of improvement? What does he need to focus on more? So I think when your skin is in the game, you can't get more rabid than a mother cat, I assure you, no matter how big your business is. But when your skin is in the game, what you really want is genuine people who have managerial courage, people and systems that show you the truth. And at a senior level, whatever consortium it is that is driving your business must be open to taking the truth on the chin. And what happens if you don't, listen? Why do we really need to listen to it? We've seen businesses, rise, and we've seen businesses fall. If you don't listen to your customer, if you don't listen to your paying patient, I'll give you an example. So we established this system. It's a great system. So some of the changes, I'll show you how it is. But some of the changes that we brought about was that no employee can access the feedback form. It just stands to reason. Why would an employee want access to the feedback form? You have nothing to say. Let's give the access of the feedback form only to the patient. So a couple of incidents, and they're actually amazing and so satisfying being in this role. There was this gentleman in this small town in Kerala who came to visit a doctor 2 days in a row and was charged, a registration fee twice in 2 days in a row. And he got access, because of his registration, he got access to a link. And he wrote in Malayalam, this was in the peak of COVID, and he wrote in Malayalam that, in a time when the world is looking for more kindness, more connectedness, more gentleness, where we are learning lessons in ways that we cannot imagine, we charged him twice. And when he was asked to pay the second time around, he said, I don't think I need to, because I was here only yesterday. And somebody said policy and made him, sort of pay twice. But it was an elderly gentleman, and we go through feedback very, very in a focused manner. So, what I did was, this is anything but right. So I copy pasted it, and I'm the messenger, okay? That I see myself as the catalyst that is sort of driving change. I don't have P&L accountability. I don't own a hospital. I'm a function head, but I have a job to do nonetheless. So I got that screenshot and I sent it to the CEO of this particular cluster. And I said, what do you have to say about that? And we are good friends, I said, what do you have to say about it? He said, no, I don't think this can happen. Not in one of my hospitals. I said, would you check, please? So he said, sure, I'll call you back. Within 10 minutes, he called me back. He said, it actually did happen. And I'm so ashamed about this whole thing. What should we do? I said, you really want to reconcile? Then let me tell you, he's not a business magnate. He's not a fantabulous, millionaire or anything of that sort. He's a regular man on the street. I said, but it's worth it, because the voice of the customer is extremely loud, So I said, if you really want to do something about it, take that money, the money that we owe him, put it in an envelope, send somebody and have it dropped off at his home. And that's precisely what was done. So we heard the voice of the customer, the money was taken to his home. It's just a very minuscule act, But then nobody knew that he would write about it, okay? So after 2 weeks, when I called him up just to generally say that, we are very sorry about it, he said he'd never imagined that something like this would happen. He wasn't even confident of the fact that somebody would actually be reading this stuff. So very frequently, we have our ears to the ground. It allows a lot of intelligence. It shows the CEOs and people who run the businesses the true picture of, what's going on in there. You physically go to hospitals, you physically occupy a chair, but you cannot get to every nook and cranny. You cannot get to every single patient. You cannot get to every single touch point. So it's important to allow the patient to speak. And this is just one of the incidents. There have been several like this where we have made recoveries. So the fact of the matter is, and this person actually said that I'm not going to go anywhere else, you've just proved the point that I can, trust your brand. So, of course, there are other hard business truths, like it's easier to retain a customer and focus on retention. It's a whole lot cheaper than to acquire a new one. If you're listening to the customer, they will tell you, your mattress is too hard, or your floor is slippery, or your hand wash soap is not the greatest, or there is this particular doctor who does not spend enough time, or I did not feel adequately treated, and all of these things have a huge impact on whether your business will actually be still standing 5 years from now, 3 years from now, even 2 years from now. And of course, you are able to preempt a PR crisis. You get to hear things very, very quickly before, the proverbial manure hits the fan. So there are, of course, a lot of reasons why you want to focus on service excellence. I also, without meaning to, offend anybody, while I have stood offended at so many points in time, where people have this misunderstanding that, a service excellence is about, grooming. It's about dressing. It's about wearing a smile and standing in the lobby. Agreed, has a role to play. Grooming does have a role to play. A pleasant demeanor is a definite plus. But when you're talking about, service excellence is actually a function of operational efficiencies. So if you have a very, very slow HIS, you can have a smiling, pleasant, well-trained person, but this person will not be able to deliver service. So what I'm saying is, the more you work on your operational efficiencies, the more your service is, it's not skin deep, the better your service excellence is. And that's the conversation that is worth having. For example, your parking lot, what does it look like? Your wash area, how polite are your people? Are your, is the linen changed, But because if you're in a hospital, no matter how effective you are, a certain amount of the whole system of service for a very long time to come, whether service has been given or service has been denied, is going to be human dependent for a very, very long time to come. So it's very important to hear the customer. This entire feedback journey is categorized into ask. You ask. So for example, an NPS question is just one of the questions that you ask. You categorize everything that they are saying, you then act, and then you follow up to check whether it has been done. Now, this feedback collection channels can be many. It can be through QR codes, it can be through SMS links, it can be through emails, letters, social media, website. We've opened up everything. We've opened up everything. We want the patient to be able to tell us in any way, at any point, day, night, available. We want to really listen to what the patient is saying. Now, from a data perspective, is it like, feedback starts pouring in the day, the moment you go live? It doesn't. It is, again, a process. It starts small, but then it gains momentum. I'd like to believe that it gains momentum because, you have it, you're slowly internally building an ecosystem where people are promoted to stand up, and take accountability for whatever went wrong. You don't penalize. It's a no blame culture. You don't want to fix the blame. You want to fix the problem. And that is something that I feel very closely aligned with quality for. So we allow these, and it's a steady incremental, deluge of feedback that eventually comes. And it's extremely satisfying to see that journey actually take place. Once the feedback comes in, your feedback form is designed into, objective questions and subjective questions. We don't have the artificial intelligence that can actually interpret emotion, finer emotions such as sarcasm, wit, genuine sorrow, as well as happiness. So, we're still stuck with words. So you do need human beings to actually look at the subjective feedback and raise those tickets to each of the units. Now, what does the unit do? The units, which when I say units, I mean the hospitals and the clinics, wherever this has been deployed, they have to quickly, within a TAT, close those complaints, take those suggestions, call back the patient, and I'm very proud to say that's happening like clockwork. So whatever the complaints are, they need to be assigned to departments. And there are a lot of things that can go wrong here, because there are a lot of things that need to be hardwired into, say, for example, the architecture of the system. So it's not something that you shop for in the market. You say that, I'm looking for a feedback system. There's plenty that's available in the market. You need to have somebody solid within your system who understands this and can customize it to ensure that it is going to give you what you and move you in the direction that you want to move in. For example, if you just want to see fancy NPS, there is a certain architecture. You can keep it open to interpretation, and you will see your NPS in the 80s and the 90s. But is that really the direction that you want to take? If you want genuineness and you want integrity and you want fidelity to the truth, you want to hold every single transaction across every single patient, across every single touch point, then you need an architect, somebody who's within the organization. So I would urge you to, place your money on, service excellence and have somebody there to actually help you get on this journey. It is not about grooming. And, I have to say this over and over again. So one thing that we've done, if you look at your screen, you'll see two, the white portion and the gray portion. That's the front end, and this is the back end. So the front end is, of course, I told you, it's the QR codes, the feedback forms and everything. But the way we have designed our back end is that, one, there is no human intervention. The patient has access to our feedback forms. If you have taken, if you have been registered, and we have a genuine telephone number through which you can prove your credentials that you are actually a patient of our ecosystem, you don't need any human being. So that you will never find any human being running around asking for feedback. They can guide you. They can guide you and say that, if you don't mind, we are really looking. So the ecosystem has changed. The whole culture has changed. People used to run away from negative feedback. Now, people are saying, okay, tell me what can I do? And I think that's a huge, step to have taken in the right direction. So the organization basically is buzzing with this whole renewed shot in the arm. We have categorized and subcategorized complaints. For example, for nursing, it has it. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So whether it is the ER journey, whether it is the OP journey, whether it is the IP journey, whether it's the daycare journey, whether it is the wellness journey, each of these journeys, there's a proper transparent blueprint that we have used. And each department, each kind of complaint has various severity levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. I could show that to you in a minute. There's an escalation matrix. So the initial stage, when I would say, I want all the heads of the departments to be level 1 escalation, they'd say, no, I'm too busy with this and I'm too busy with that. Let's delegate it to someone. And it took a lot of conversations, a lot of, wrestling in the mud pit to say that, it's absolutely fine if you want to delegate, but the name will be yours because you are the head of the department and you have to step up and take responsibility. Today, it has become a part of our culture where the function heads step up. That I cannot even the time does not permit me to tell you the sweeping changes that these people are making, taking advice from patients, and also ensuring that complaints that have occurred once should not, to a large extent, happen ever again. So simple things like going back and talking to the person who's concerned with this, fixing things, changing things. So there's a whole movement that is taking place. We also have courtesy calls. We don't want to be in a situation where, we are constantly blaming people. Like, you did not do this, you did not do that. you did not, get there on time, or you gave the patient cold tea, coffee, kanji, whatever it is. We also have developed a complete R&R based on these compliments, because it's data, so there is no bias. So you're not dependent on an HOD telling me, okay, who are the good people? Who are the people you want to reward? It's right there for you to say, because there's a very simple question. Would you like to mention somebody who delivered exemplary service to you? And believe me, if you think that patients are stingy with compliments, you should really come and see me at some point in time. They are overwhelmed. They give you the names of doctors, they give you the name of the PCAs, the transportation people, who push their wheelchair. They give you the name of the maintenance guy. They give you the name of the person who's giving them tea early in the morning. They've talked about nurses. So we built an entire R&R system around it. And every month we recognize, the Aston Ninja, because we call them the ninjas, because they're warriors, and it infuses a whole lot of energy, and we reward them. And it's all data driven. So my department at the end of every month says that in each unit, who is the person who's got the most number of positive acknowledgements from patients. So these are things that you can actually do when you start listening to the voice of the customer. We also have a zero tolerance escalation matrix, which means that, if there is something, for example, if you're impolite, and if the patient says that you've been impolite, it's a problem. So you'll definitely hear from learning and development. And if it happens too often, you'll hear from HR as well. We want to ensure, like I said, to a large extent, the fact that service has been delivered or denied is going to be human dependent. So you have to be very sure that the person who's there occupying those counters, those very, very important touch points. I have no qualms in saying that there was this one point where a patient wanted her reports, and she was kept waiting, and multiple trips to the counter, and said, I cannot believe you are, asked her. And this was 6 months ago, and the employee actually turned around and said, to the effect that, it can only work like this. Basically, I don't know how to say it in English, but colloquially, what she meant is, too bad, suck it up, So, from that point to here, where people are saying that, what, I'm being observed, and whatever I deliver, good, bad, or ugly, now these are the hardwired stuff that's in the system. This people don't need to know about. This is where you're the person who's designing this whole ecosystem comes to the fore, and this is his or her job, saying that, how do I want this to be done? So we have service level. So this is the operational definition: S1, S2, S3, S4. So anyone who's looking at a feedback, a subjective feedback, the computer's already told you whether this is an S1 complaint, an S2 complaint, because all those matching, all those connections have already been made even before we have launched this entire thing. So your typical everyday thing is an S3. I want pillow, I want, my bed is not feeling comfortable, or I think you delayed something, etc., etc. That will all be an S3. S2 will be a breach of clinical or service standards that may have medical, legal, or PR implications, because people are so trigger happy, with Facebook and the Instagram and so on and so forth. And S1, which is a severe breach of patient. See, by now, the service recovery and everything would have already taken place. But it really does not hurt to know when somebody actually puts it out there, and you give them an avenue. There is nothing that prevents them from using that avenue. So if they say that, last night I felt unsafe, if somebody says that, and every complaint that is raised, our endeavor is to look at that complaint, make sure that the ticket is raised on that particular day itself, and the unit or the hospital addresses it on that very day. So it does put a certain amount of strain in the system, but it's a good strain. And I think that it's a great way to start the journey. So, you can slice and dice based on clinical departments, non-clinical departments. You have a response stat, and the service excellence team, what they are expected to do. This is a brand new concept, I feel. A lot of people don't really understand the business implications of having a team whose focus is service, and it's all number driven. You can see the entire trajectory of growth, etc., in terms of number of feedback, quality of feedback, what are the closures looking like. So you need to manage the patient experience on the floor, focus on proactive management of patient expectations, and of course, courtesy calls. So basically, what do you do when you hear the voice of the customer? You have to take action. So it's a whole ecosystem. It's a universe unto itself. First, you design the system, you develop the system, you launch the system, and then you work with the people to ensure how they respect that system and, actually move the needle on that whole dashboard of moving towards customer centricity. So too much to say really, because the way forward will be, you need to build on that ecosystem, coaching, implement service, standard operating procedures, drive a culture of service excellence. So the thing is, I felt so many times that the people in the front office are probably the least noticed in the organizations. The doctor gets noticed, the nurses get noticed, but unless you notice them, they don't feel motivated enough. And once they start getting noticed, sometimes for the wrong reasons, there is a certain amount of energy that is infused in the entire system. So like Dr. Anna said, I believe from the bottom of my heart that the customer experience is the next competitive battleground. I think we do a lot of saber rattling in terms of technical prowess and the quality of doctors and the names of doctors that we have. But I think that eventually what really sets you apart is the service that you deliver, along with the clinical expertise that you bring to the table. And with that, I end my session. Thank you, Dr. Anna.
Thank you, Bindu. That was a wonderful session, opening our eyes to a lot more areas. Of course, voice of the customer is something that's well known. Patient feedback is well known, but you just opened another world to all of us and the depth to which we can go to actually satisfy our patients. So thank you so much for that.